more. Here to join us to talk about that and more, the man himself, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. How are you, Senator? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. It's always good to be with you, Sean.
All right, so you commend him for upholding the constitutional authority of Congress, but he still held out that he feels that regardless of what Congress does, he still thinks he has the authority to just go ahead with the use of force. What did you make of that?
Well, look, I'm always happy to give the president credit anytime he turns back from a mistake and does the right thing. And on Syria, the military attack he proposed, I think, was a mistake for this country, but he did two things right. Number one, he heard the bipartisan calls and submitted to the constitutional authority of Congress. But number two, even more importantly, once that happened, the American people spoke out in overwhelming numbers. You know, in our office, we got over 5,000 calls from Texans opposing military intervention in Syria, just about 50 calls supporting it. It was literally 100 to 1. And again, to give the president credit, he heard the voices of Congress, he heard the voices of the people, and he postponed the vote because he was going to lose the vote. And I think that was the right thing to do, and I'm happy to credit him for seeing the red light and for pulling back from the brink.
What do you make of Putin's aggressiveness in all of this, especially as, you know, a shield for Syria, arms to Iran? What do you make of that?
Well, look, Putin and Russia have been bad actors throughout this proceeding. You know, he has offered to convince Syria to hand over their chemical weapons. If that actually happened, that'd be a terrific outcome. But I got to say, I think the likelihood of it happening is very, very slim. I think we have reasons to be deeply skeptical about Putin's motives, that they're basically for delay or propaganda. But look, much as Reagan with the Soviet Union, I'm happy to trust but verify.
Yeah.
But, you know, Sean, I don't know if you saw what Putin wrote in the New York Times today.
I did. We were talking about it.
It was truly astonishing, and I think the final paragraph was the most striking, where he castigated the president and Americans for believing in American exceptionalism. And, you know, Sean, I actually think he was right. Autocrats have reason to fear when Americans focus on our principles and focus on exceptionalism, because it's been American exceptionalism that stood up to the Nazis and stopped the murder from the Nazis, and it was American exceptionalism that stood up to the Soviet Union and freed hundreds of millions from behind the Iron Curtain. So Putin is right to be concerned about American exceptionalism.
Well said. I think the best response so far that I've heard to that New York Times article. Let me ask you, in terms of our perception in the world. I mean, this is not an area where Russia has had much influence over the last 4 decades. Now they seem to have a foothold there, and we seem to be given a back seat here. What are the long-term prospects of, you know, democratization in the Middle East? I don't see a good prognosis here.
Look, it is a very dangerous time, and one of the principles that's been true from time immemorial is that bullies and tyrants don't respect weakness. And the administration's policy consistently has been not to further U.S. national security interests. I mean, that at the end of the day, what was most problematic with his Syria proposal is that it was, according to the president, he wanted the U.S. military to, quote, defend international norms and make a statement. It's not the job of the military to make statements or defend international norms. Our soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines signed up to defend the United States of America. And if the president had succeeded in weakening the Assad administration, look, Assad is a monster, but if they had weakened him and the result had been al-Qaeda or al-Nusra terrorists taking control, seizing those chemical weapons, that would have undermined U.S. national security rather than advancing it.
What do you make of Pew Research that 74% of conservatives, Tea Party conservatives, are not happy with the leadership in Congress? And I think this probably got a little bit worse when Eric Cantor proposed on the one vote that would actually fund and defund Obamacare, and the funding one is the one that would go forward. A lot of people are angry about it.
Well, look, I think people are frustrated with politicians in Washington who, frankly, aren't listening to the American people. We're in the middle of the most important domestic fight we have had in years, and that is the fight to defund Obamacare between now and September 30th. You know, the last time I was on this show, Sean, and I talked about the national website, don'tfundit.com, within 24 hours of going on Hannity, we had over 100,000 additional people go to don'tfundit.com, sign the national petition. We're now nearly at 1.3 million. And listen, if we're counting on politicians in Washington, it ain't going to happen. This train wreck, the biggest job. Yeah.
To those critics that say this is not the way to do it, that if there's a shutdown in the government, the Republicans will get blamed. I don't have a problem with that. I think actually it would be a benefit for the country to have this debate again, especially with the poll numbers against it.
Well, there are a lot of Republicans that are advocating we give up before we start. And Sean, one thing's true. You lose 100% of the battles where you surrender at the outset. If we actually stand up together, if we go to don'tfundit.com and the American people stand together, we can defund Obamacare.
All right, don'tfundit.com. Let's beat the last record. So we need over 100,000 people to sign it. All right, I'm with you. Thank you.
Excellent.
Senator Cruz, don'tfundit.com. All right, I got it. All right.